also dissolved the regional parliament and called a new regional election to be held on December 21st. Sebastian Faber is a professor of Hispanic Studies at Oberlin College. We asked him what Catalan leader Carles Puigdemont is trying to do.
I think he's holding on to the line that Catalonia has held on to for the past months at least, so in the same way that the October referendum was held and maintained to be legitimate by the fact that the Spanish Constitutional Court had declared it invalid and it passed now. The same way now, Puigdemont is deciding to not acknowledge the legitimacy of the national Spanish government, and so to not acknowledge the faith that which 55 that's been already sanctioned to fire him medically. So he's holding on to, he's hoping he's going to do that it will work to basically have just the Spanish government will come to accept it and accept the Catalan government as an equal.
The Catalan population will do what it did on October 1st and come out on the streets in a massive show of opposition to the Spanish government. But Faber says that would be asking a lot. Meanwhile, Spanish prosecutors say top Catalan officials could face rebellion charges as soon as Monday.
Kenya's second presidential election since August remained in limbo today, as the election commission said it was working on a way to move forward in opposition areas where voting has been postponed because of unrest. While most of the country was calm, police used tear gas to disperse crowds in Nairobi's slum areas where anger towards the government runs deep. Election observers say the country is facing a test of its
Election Commission's website showed President Uhuru Kenyatta with vast leads over Odinga and 6 other candidates. Any decision to declare Kenyatta the winner would likely intensify grievances among opposition supporters in the East African country with a reputation for stability and growth. The Supreme Court nullified the August vote because of irregularities, the first time a court in Africa has overturned a presidential election. Odinga, whose legal challenge led to the ruling, withdrew from the new election, saying the process was not credible because of the lack of electoral reforms. Marie Clark is Executive Director of Action Aid USA. She says the Kenyan elections in the past have been tenuous and that the Supreme Court would need to play.
One of the grave concerns that has been held by human rights advocates in Kenya this time is that the opposition party, which has been open to more violent responses in the past, would do so again. And we've been a bit encouraged that while they have reformed, that they and have advocated for civil disobedience, that they have been explicitly encouraging people not to use violent tactics. And I think the courts are going to be really important at this time. And if the Supreme Court holds strong and insists on addressing these systemic flaws and opening up elections, I think there can still be hope that Kenya will have a stable government.
Some Kenyans have raised concerns about the way Thursday's elections was conducted. The Electoral Commission announced that 35,564 polling stations were open on voting day, but the Commission chairman later tweeted polling stations. Clark says Kenyans have a history of civil engagement and that people need to have a voice. She says she is hopeful that democracy will prevail in spite of regional conflicts.
And I think it's been really interesting to watch as civil society has engaged. I mean, I think that Kenya is a country that has a very robust and engaged civil society. People have come out to the streets and protest when they are unhappy with something. The nurses have recently been on a strike, which has had a huge impact, and it's at a moment where the country is reeling from drought. They have shown their power by going on strike. So again, I think there's a lot of opportunity for civil society to have their voices heard in Kenya, and hopefully for that to prevail, unlike in Uganda, for example, where President Museveni is doing such a clear crackdown against civil society.
Again, that was Marie Clark, Executive Director of Action Aid USA.
Down in Somalia's capital today, killing at least 23 people and wounding more than 30. 2 more blasts were also heard, one when an attacker detonated a suicide vest. Today's blast came 2 weeks after more than 350 people were killed in a massive truck bombing on a busy Mogadishu street in the country's worst ever attack. Al-Shabaab, Africa's deadliest Islamic militant group, quickly claimed responsibility for today's attack and said its fighters were inside the hotel. Mike Fleshman is the former human rights director for the American Committee on Africa. He talked about the significance of the bombing.
It underscores just how far away from a political settlement in Somalia the Somali political factions and their external military and political backers are. The promising internal developments back in 2006, 2011, 2004 with the advent of a moderate Islamic-based reconciliation and national unity project that was in fact beginning to unite the Somali clans and had a good chance of actually restoring a national government was short-circuited by the United States and their Ethiopian military allies. And that has set the stage for the emergence of a very radical Islamist movement, Al-Shabaab, in place of a modern Islamic rights union. And we've had massive external intervention in Somalia by its neighbors and by the United States. And the result of that has been this series of horrendous suicide bombings, a long-standing occupation of large stretches of Somalia territory by Kenyan troops primarily on behalf of the regional authorities. Anomaly there is a peacekeeping force, but actually acting as an occupation force, and an indication of continuing and deepening U.S. military involvement in the region.
That's longtime Africa observer Mark Fleshman.
At a time when many are feeling marginalized and disenfranchised, today former Black Panther member Erica Huggins urged a group of St. Mary's College of California students to go inward and outward simultaneously. Huggins talked about her work as a lifelong activist and about her own journey in experiencing the death of her partner, followed by a 2-year incarceration which separated her from her baby several decades ago. She urged the crowd to meditate, find a personal connection to issues like police brutality, mass incarceration, and profiling that are plaguing our society, and to do something. She began by discussing the ways in which history is repeating itself.
Racism has been institutionalized, and the reason we're seeing it again is because each of us, the big we, have not stepped forward to stop furthering it. I love all of the groups doing whatever they're doing, but what's most important to me is the children. We're all children, and there will always be children born on the earth, but what quality of life are we planning for them? Are we thinking generations out as we form our activist groups? I don't mean tutoring children or partnering with the school districts. That's great. What I'm talking about is the spirit of a child. They're having to be much like children living in war zones right in the United States. And I know this because I travel and I see it.
And what do we do about it?
Well, I'll ask all of the listeners, what are you willing to do? All the world's children are mine in my heart. But our societies teach us that we love the people closest to us and the rest of it is just too big. We just don't do that. I don't understand that. I never have. So what happens, because I feel that all the world's children are mine, I end up working with children and youth. And I love it. Children are curious and live in a state of wonder about all the things we're talking about today. My best experiences in 2016 and 17 have been going to K-8 schools and talking about what can we do in our world, and talking about race in ways that our listeners were not given the opportunity to do.
Talk about how self-care and love will really contribute to the cause of making the world a more just place. How does that serve the agenda?
Is your machine that you're recording with, is it battery operated?
It is.
What happens when you record and record and record. What happens to the battery?
It wears out.
We're like that. We're like that. We need recharging, rebooting, resetting, rejuvenation. We do. I'm not talking about having a spa day. I'm talking about just pausing and being with yourself, getting to know her. You might not even like her, but if you sit still enough, you'll figure out why you don't. And then you can move forward. And it's from that place that you can really start.
That's Erica Huggins, former member of the Black Panther Party.
Tonight at the Hastings Law School in San Francisco, the fight to free Mumia Abu-Jamal, a fight against racist U.S. capitalism. The event, which starts at 6:30 and is wheelchair accessible, features Rachel Wolkenstein, who's worked for many years as an activist to free Abu-Jamal and has also served as one of his attorneys. Abu-Jamal was convicted of the 1981 murder of Philadelphia police officer Daniel Faulkner. We asked Wolkenstein what Abu-Jamal's case has to do with the fight against capitalism.
It has to do with the fact that Mumia's case represents the expression of black liberation and understanding the nature of the capitalist state and the fact that the legal system, judicial system is unjust and it's racially and class biased. And then the challenge and fighting for this case requires actually an understanding of the way to fight back against capitalism and deal with black liberation. The issue of Mumia's case now a Pennsylvania Supreme Court justice, refused to step down from hearing state appeals cases in which he had been involved as a prosecutor.
A federal judge has ruled that Vermont's largest city can dismantle a homeless encampment in the woods where 3 men have been staying. The Civil Liberties Union had filed a class action lawsuit on behalf of the men and Burlington's homeless population, saying the city is violating their rights by threatening to close down the encampment without finding alternative housing. The lawsuit came after the city removed a homeless encampment in another area of the city. City officials counter the encampment is in an environmentally sensitive area. U.S. District Court Judge Jeffrey Crawford said Friday that the men have other options, ranging from seeking housing through social agencies to moving to another location on city property. The case is